Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. I am your host, Richard, and thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me for us to share some time together. For the viewers, I don't have any headphones on today. They always look kind of bulky, playing with my little man bun there. And so I thought I would maybe take them off. The only thing is it just sounds different because you don't hear your amplified voice coming back in. Yeah. So I'm going to give it a whirl. The only downfall is if it starts to sound off, I'm not going to notice. I could do this whole thing and it could be not out of sight. We used to have this Coach Rothwell. Be like, come on now, get down, hit him in the mouth. Yeah. Now I almost feel like I need my headphones if I'm going to get the voice right. Anywho, it is Monday. I hope your Monday has started off fantabulous. Mine, I don't know yet since I'm recording this Sunday evening, but I'm sure it's going to be great. Updates. So of course, my normal tempo would be to have an interview on Monday. But like I said, I've been working with Podmatch and I've got it out there. I've got some scheduled, not as many as I'd like, but yeah, it just takes more time, I think, than anticipated or one might think. I described it the other day a little bit like moving an aircraft carrier. It doesn't turn on a dime. And, I had this rhythm. Man, it was just such a great rhythm. And it was like I had so many interviews completed. I'd be like, I got 27 upcoming. I mean, it was just bananas. And so it was easy. But, it took a couple of months, I guess, probably to get that wave, like from joining Podmatch. So some of it is me, how much I am able to do in terms of match or pass, and some of it is them, might be the other person. But either way, like I said, it is like turning an aircraft carrier. It doesn't steer on a dime. It moves slowly, unlike the little battleships and frigates and destroyers that are protecting the aircraft carrier. But, at the same time, thinking of longevity, the marathon pace, how long is this going to go? Who knows? Till it doesn't anymore. Till podcasts aren't a thing, I suppose. But it'll go on that long. And so when you think about that kind of pace, it kind of calms the nerves, soothes, slows down that, hey, I need to do everything right now. Although I do have that sense of urgency. But I mean, it's been, you know, it's just been having my niece here for a week, yeah, spending time with her, my daughter, doing things like that. I didn't necessarily, but I blocked off last week because I knew that was going to be happening. Although nobody had scheduled, so it wouldn't have mattered. However, yeah, spending time with her, it seems like, it's kind of like we had Buck, then we're waiting for school to end. And it's like, oh, come here for a week. We had a good time. I enjoyed spending time with my niece and my daughter. And, I think there was one day, I cannot remember if I put this in Unfiltered Friday, but I took them to the movies and what was it? them all in the movies, four of them, my daughter and three of our two friends and my niece. So yeah, it was fun times. They went and saw a movie while I attended a meeting, a Zoom meeting. So it all worked out. Yeah, I cannot believe I do not remember if I mentioned that in the last episode. I may have or I may not. But the only notable thing about that was, the gentleman from the kiosk. If I told the story, forgive me. If I didn't, then I'd like to enlighten you of, yeah, some dude hassling me, trying to sell me Machine Gun Kelly shoe cleaner. And while my daughter was talking to me and unwrapping a candle, and he interrupted her, which pissed me off to no end. And so wasn't my finest response. But man, if I already told you no, then no means no, back the fuck up. If I have to puff up like a cobra, which I don't, yeah, I don't really think I did. But um, yeah, I don't hide feelings very well. So if I'm disappointed or upset, you'll know. It'll be on my face. And if I'm highly irritable and there's potential for violence, you'll see that on my face too. So I think I had to look. I'm certain of it. But yeah, outside of that, we got some rain and I spent some time taking her back. Met up with my brother-in-law at Bucky's. Looked like we're on the same wavelength because the sister-in-law stayed home. She might have had to work, in all fairness, but my wife stayed home, my daughter stayed home, and it was he and I, the couriers for the day. But it was nice. I met up with him, and then came back, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my wife was asleep. She had a rough day. I think it was Friday, maybe. She's helping, some of her clients that she helps. They recently moved because the client's spouse, or well, he's a client too. He's a professor. Yeah. So, um, and they were like in a kind of Airbnb type of thing, rental home temporarily. People were being a pain in the boot, and so they ended up going like they found something, but it was kind of the opposite way. And if you understood where it was located, there's not a lot of rental options kind of between here and there. And they were waiting on their house to close, and it finally closed, and they got all their stuff moved. But I guess it seems normal. The movers put everything in the garage, and my wife was telling me, I guess there's a set of steps to get everything into the house. And they put all the pans in one box. She said there was just a few heavy boxes that gave her a little trouble and stressed her back out, and she's never had back injuries. And me, I've had back injuries or kind of spinal compression type injuries from playing football since I was young, where I got like speared in the back, and then a few nasty hits in Little League. You're not, you don't hit as hard, but your form isn't as great either because you're a kid. You don't have the motor skills. But needless to say, in time, I'm 48 years old. I'll be 49 in a couple of weeks. And um, most people say have had the pleasure of a back injury. But, I've had upper back, lower back, neck, but always first was kind of lower back. And then I had kind of where I kind of got crushed almost like I was a fulcrum on a seesaw, like underneath a dolly with a bunch of sheetrock and stuff. And whoever couldn't hold it, and I was kind of underneath, and it kind of crunch my back up underneath my shoulder blades. Had to get shots in there in my neck. Not pleasant. Done lots of PT for neck. No bueno. But it's all related, you know. This left side I get it. That's the side I get sciatica on. But yeah, that whole side's jeffed, man. It's the side I got the shots on. But yeah, being in traction, PT on the neck. I used to get off of a 12-hour shift, go over from Austin to Bastrop. You put me in that traction where you're laying down, and you just have some light music on. He'd throw the lights off, and I could just lay there and relax as I stretched my neck. But it was nice. Yeah, so she had lower back injury, and she was like, you know, Advil, muscle relaxer, daytime sleep, that kind of whole deal. And my daughter, her schedule's been kind of wonky as well. She had the day before we went to the mall and her friends, you know, I gave her Ollie sleep dummies. I watched her take them, but I don't know, she was just so wired up, excited, almost like a first day of school. She didn't sleep, and she had a long day, then followed up by a long slumber. And yeah, it was just weird kind of vibes after returning. You know, my daughter was asleep when I left, but up when I came home. Her bed was stripped, and she didn't want nothing. She was in her own little world playing computer games. And speaking of which, my wife and daughter, they're at fifth grade. All the kids they went to fifth grade with, they're having a little pool party today. So I get the opportunity, a little window to spit some knowledge, maybe, spit some facts, some thoughts, some perspective, some things. Go back to last episode, what's keeping me up at night. I hope you enjoyed that episode. But you know, I kind of have this outline and kind of the way I come up with things. I've told you guys I keep a reminder list, and anytime I'm Ubering or come up with anything, I go to the list, put down the idea, and sometimes the idea goes somewhere, sometimes it doesn't. I think of them and try to connect them and uh, put them into something that's useful or valuable for the listeners. Just my thoughts on it. They could be valuable, they could be not. But also in this little dance here of host and listener getting to know one another. And speaking of which, you know, if you've enjoyed any of the episodes, hit me up. Look at my link tree in any of the show notes. I believe there's a contact button. Tell me what you think. Say hello. Tell me who you are. Yeah, so in this little dance, it's me trying to offer perspective. So you, the listener, at some point, whether it's via Facebook, Instagram, an email, a text message, my accountability group, that we get to know each other and we can continue to have conversations as long as they're interesting, but treat it kind of like a brainstorm because everything here really is, I've learned that it's about perspective. You know, once it's kind of like what you're about, um, what's the main thing, you know, maybe when I was thinking, like, let's say my coach, um, if his thing is optimization, then everything kind of goes towards that. If my thing is everything is about perspective, offering people a different perspective. because that's what I needed. Once I shifted my perspective in that, oh my gosh, why am I mad at a business decision that the company made during the pandemic? Why am I mad? Yes, that's hurtful. Your ego a little bit. That was the first job I'd ever been laid off from. So yeah, but once I was like, oh man, look what they taught me. Look at everything I learned, the people I met, some of the accolades, like being a tier one leader. That is by far that is my favorite accomplishment, meaning that my team believes that I give a shit about them. Through engagement surveys that you get about your leader, they said, yes, he cares about me. He includes us. And that was because I took time to develop relationships with them. I've said a million times, rounding was my favorite thing. So it was those relationships. But perspective, shift in perspective is what changed me, or, the change in perspective is what allowed me to move forward and to understand. It was the same in learning. Hey, I used to always tell my team, like, there's certain, I think, military people, and that's why they have such a hard time transitioning, is that a lot of that is not what we do, it's who we are. I used to tell my team, caregivers, we care for people naturally. It's who we are, not what we do. And so when I got laid off, that crushed my identity. And I had to sit there and figure out and go, okay, well, really, the words I associate with myself is, or that I want to be, is kind, caring, and compassionate. And through a podcast, part of, my love for people, wanting other people to understand and know that they're not alone. Somebody else has dealt with something like this. Um, you know, it's it's that support. But I come to understand that the words kind, caring, and compassionate, that was more of my identity. But how I deliver kindness, caring, and compassion is just different. Before, I've delivered it through cooking. You know, if I'm making you a meal, especially if it's your anniversary or something, this is something you're going to enjoy. It's nourishing your body. Um, Working in the emergency room, everything came from that identity of being kind, caring, and compassionate, not that I was a healthcare provider. And it's the same with, a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and you have these um, veterans who have trouble transitioning. And it's because a lot of their identity is wrapped up in being a soldier or gunslinger. And then, but you have to break down and go, hey, really, I'm a protector and I'm a server, I'm a patriot, different things like that, because I was in the military and I associate with those same things. But how do I take those parts of my identity and move forward just in a different capacity? So it's how I deliver kindness, caring, and compassion that's changed. That's the only thing. I have to throw the headphones on after all that. I'm moving away too much, and I feel like I could be getting squirrely on the mic because I'm so excited, and this amps me up to talk about this. It truly does. So yeah, perspective is kind of my thing, because if you can shift that, once I shifted that and was like, man, They give me all these tools. I should be thankful and grateful for this experience. Once I shifted that, and I think it was the tier one leader knowing that because that's that representation of kindness, caring, and compassion as a leader. I care about my people, so I want to know what's going on because what's going on outside of this facility in your personal life certainly impacts what you bring to the team when we're focused on something. And, maybe it doesn't make a fucking hill of beans if you work at Ross or Dollar General and you're stocking shelves or whatever. But in a healthcare environment, especially when it's a facility, has multiple service lines, had an urgent care. I mean, I had two patients expire in my parking lot. I had a person drive up and run in saying his spouse was unresponsive and she was deceased in oh in the front in the entrance because it's a big awning and the facility looks like it could be a mini hospital. It's big because it has a gymnasium and all kinds of stuff attached to it. So in those situations, you have to kind of stay mentally prepared, I guess. It's just a little more serious. I forgot where I was going with that. I got me a nice little Warhead Extreme Sour doodad because my mouth was a little dry. But yeah, I was thinking of something in perspective and I had to pause for a second. All right, I am back. I had I lost my train of thought, and partially because my chair kept bumping into the mic, and I realized that it was not arranged right a little bit. But anywho, I don't know what we were talking about. Something to do with perspective, being a tier one leader, rounding what you bring to the team, all the kindness, caring, and compassion, caring about them, and knowing that how I was now going to deliver kindness, caring, and compassion would be different. Would it be by going back into healthcare? After turning down jobs and oh, what in the world? Whoa, whoa, it almost a little mounting problem. I looked down and that damn thing was in my lap. No bueno. You caught it here live. What I mean about staying prepared. We're not fucking stacking shoes and shit at Ross, okay? You got to be on it. But yeah, so after deciding that and knowing it made sense, it was like a podcast is the way you can reach more people, all because you care. Oh, what is it? Not long. I'll be 2 years, no alcohol. So going through that, um, getting unstuck, the layoff, relating to people, I was like, yes, of course I want to help other people who feel this way, who feel like shit, because I can relate. And so once I understood that and I could relate it to Uber, it was really figuring out my identity. And, a lot of the veterans have the same thing in that once they understand that, hey, this is my identity, this is what's good about it, what's bad about it, what I like and don't like, and now it's just time to climb a different mountain. I told somebody that the other day, yesterday. I mean, I was having a conversation. Oh, yeah. With my neighbor. He was mowing because we have 12 acres. Yeah. I mean, I was going to talk about that conversation. Then when I mentioned that, it joggled, boggled my brain for a second. But yeah, so of course I wanted to help others. And in doing so, I understood that the podcast reach could extend further than the reach I was having in the clinic. And that's kind of what gave me the confidence and mental wherewithal to move forward. And when I mean mental wherewithal, it's kind of like the logic of it all. But speaking of logic, and it's interesting how you can mull over an episode, research it, how these things come together, putting ideas, prompts into Chat GPT. But this initially came from I had this thought, and I wanted to ask all the listeners, and if you think this is weird or not, and I don't know, it's kind of like trying to understand what does this mean about me. And I think it had something to do with uh, something I saw with, we're talking about Theo Vaughn and Andrew Huberman, something about if your index finger is shorter than your ring finger, then I guess you have more testosterone exposure in the womb. And so, yeah, that made me think of this weird thing of like, why are you the way you are? And from that comment, I made this leap to why do I when I use a pen, I typically use the same pen until that pen runs out. Like for my journal, I have a pen that stays on it, but I'm not like the kind of person who, if you have a jar of pens, you just grab any pen. Not me. I grab the same pen. I don't think I really ever, I do have pens on my desk, um, but I use the same pen. It's actually off to the side. So even though I have a jar of pens, I have the pen that I actually use. I will use that pen until it's gone, done, and then I'll get another one. I'm like that with many things. And I'm curious if you guys are like that too. Or do you just grab any pen? My wife is any pen will do. I'm more like I get attached to a pen, but it's the same like toothpaste. One tube till it's completely done. Shampoo, this, that, the other. My wife is different. Like let's say with shampoo, conditioner, and all that, and toothpaste, she can have multiple ones open. Not me. It drives me up the walls. But I've always been that way. And it's just kind of interesting because it's maybe, is it a mindset of commitment, focus, and closure? Like seeing something through? I used to be that way with books until I did get into a phase where I would read multiple books at one time. So, yeah, that I can do on the multiple. But typically in other things, I do prefer to use it till it's done. It's almost like, I guess, if you were to have a weapon and a backup. Maybe unless they were all the same pens. They were all the same kind of generic ink stick, and I had a bucket of them. Do I use the same one? Maybe because is it overwhelming to have too many choices? I just had that thought of like where you think about how they say presidents will wear two color suits because they don't want to make choices. They already have too many choices to make, so they wear the same plain stuff. Am I unconsciously doing that? Or is it, I don't know, it's a belief of like, why open this one if, why not save it and keep it fresh until this one's done versus having two that are maybe half fresh. Or then if you rotate back and forth, then they run out at the same time. Then you're like, no pins versus one, then you know you have backup because it should be, right? I don't know. What is the, yeah, I should probably see a therapist and ask them what is that all about? Is it good? Is it bad? But it makes me think of, is it the way that I stay grounded and maybe I see the culture around me of distraction, constant switching, whether it's working, relationships, values, on to the next. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty grounded and I've stayed pretty close to, I don't feel like I've gone too far out of who I am when it comes to staying between the lines, what's really at my core. Um, but I used to observe this all the time. I know when, I would go through periods where I didn't date. I could have dated. I could have slept around a lot, but I didn't. I didn't want to. Because even at a young age, even though it was so tempting, especially as a young man, boy with testosterone, I knew that it was wrong. One, I knew that it wouldn't be fulfilling. Although sometimes I wonder. Now, oh, man, I passed up a lot. But I was very noticeable in terms of the biggest thing I noticed in watching other people date was especially girls, because sometimes, like, let's say a girl might be interested in me, but she just broke up with somebody. I'm not interested in that. Like, you're going to go from this person to that person. Like, those people who can't be alone, they need to be with someone. And I feel like I used to know somebody like this, a friend. And so it's like, well, what kind of music do you like? I don't know. Like, or I like this. Well, it's truly whatever that girl liked. They didn't really have their own identity, their own likes, their own dislikes. They hopped around so much that they just absorbed the identity of who was the next person. And I never wanted to be involved in that or get into that trap. Although my mind is like, impossible. I mean, that was the reason I was alone. I chose not to do that because I did not want the same like my business coach about paying for YouTube premium so he doesn't see no ads. He does not want extraneous bullshit in his brain. Well, maybe that was my conscious way of saying, yeah, how are you going to know who you are and what you actually like if you're constantly going from one person to another? Because I mean, a lot of times, sometimes it's the similarities that bring you together and you have that in common, but then you're introduced to new things and yeah, but it's that stay put ability. You got a lot of that in the world. I mean, it's important to spend time with yourself. It's okay to be alone. Man, It used to always bug me that people always felt like they needed somebody. I never felt like I needed anyone. I always felt like I just needed more of me, the good part of me. Any other thoughts? Yeah. So my neighbor, he often mows because it requires a big seated mower, and I weed eat. And so he was mowing, and we got the philosophizing. It's interesting. His name is the same as mine, Richard, and but he's about 10 years older than me. And my mom's out there talking too, but it's like you have people in their 60s and 50s and 40s, and um, or he might be right at 60, but he's not retired yet. But I love these conversations, and I've talked with him before at length about. Oh yeah, that's why. That's how we got into this philosophical discussion. Was him, my daughter at 11. He he has grandkids. They're not that old. They're getting bigger. Maybe 4, 5, I don't know. But my mom had mentioned something to him about, spending time with your grandkids and how wonderful it was and whatnot. Because here lately, he's getting a lot of the stuff that my daughter had. She had a one of those John Deere motorized uh, little vehicle things that you ride around. You have to charge them up. They got the battery, like in the Toys R Us. So yeah, he took that, and we were just talking about getting rid of. We're trying to get rid of this bunk bed that's a full on the bottom, a twin on top, and we could sell it at that place we always do the consignment shit, but there's no fucking way I'm putting it together. Just the poor bastard who bought it. If my wife said we're buying this, I'd be like, I'm not fucking taking it apart. Well, I'd take it apart more so than I'd put it together. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm not putting that bullshit together. So he can have it. But we got to philosophizing about spending time with grandkids and how wonderful it was. As like him and my mom were talking about, and so we got into this discussion about growing up in the 80s, and for him it would have been the 70s. He's about 10 years older than me, and how different it was. And I've been on this thing lately, and this will all tie in of um, if you guys have listened to the episodes, kind of my thoughts on, hey, the time to be the dad and husband and stuff is now, not in 10 years. Well, brain fart there to make sure I hit record again. Yeah, not 7, 8 years from now when my daughter graduates and wants to go to college or do whatever she's going to do. That's not the time to be in the position to be where I need to be. It's like, no, now is that time. And this led into this discussion of, he talked about, because he's kind of an semi an entrepreneur. He sold insurance, and I think he did it with his mom. I don't know if it was her company, um, but and I'm talking like Blue Cross Blue Shield type stuff. And but he did work for our local grocery chain around here. I think for 18 years maybe as a truck driver. And he kind of topped off. He was never going to go any higher, so he went into the insurance business with his mom. And he talked about kind of that point. We were talking about being there for your children, like now, versus you're trying to provide for them more and more and more So you're always working. And, my parents, I was a latchkey kid. My grandparents lived further away, so they didn't necessarily watch me during the week. There was a time I had a babysitter, but then there was times like it was just me. I remember when the microwave came out because it meant I could make my own snacks. They had microwave French fries. I was a picky eater, but I loved French fries. All kids love French fries. But I would have time off by myself between, I guess, getting off the bus and going to football practice, or maybe somebody else's parents would pick us up for football practice, Little League. But we started into this discussion of when they said it was nice, like spending time with your grandkids. I had this thought of like, well, it should be nice to spend time with your children too. But they didn't get that because they were working. Why? Is it because the world got so expensive and we needed double incomes? Is it because women wanted some of the same freedoms and rights and whatnot and equality and said, I don't want to stay home and join the workforce? And we know that women did it when there was, what was it, Rosie Rivet? We know that they stepped up to the plate during World War II to help the country out. And then they kind of went back, but then they wanted this more independent thing. And, like I always say, I'm not blaming it. But what I'm getting at is that whether it's that desire, you know, or whatever it is that drove it, we created this other problem. Is that other people are raising our fucking kids. The parents aren't raising their kids. A nanny, an after school program, a babysitter, you name it. And that's how it was like in the 80s and probably like I think Richard said the 70s. I mean, he's like his parents never knew what the fuck he was doing. He was out doing what the fuck ever. I mean, just like us, it was like come home when it's dark. I mean, we did all the bullshit that kids do, whether it's try to smoke cigarettes or didn't really drink, um, every once in a while. But just running around 12 acres here, there, everywhere, building fires, shooting snakes. Um, yeah, those were good times. But we always had an adult here, like during the summer. But I think about during the school year. I mean, I don't know. There's just so many people who don't. And, of course, the government's not going to say, I think it's better that one parent should stay home and raise their children. No, because you know what two incomes mean for the government? Double the fucking taxes. Means they get to make more money. Yeah. You think they're gonna anybody who has the opportunity? No, 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 I'm good. No, I don't want any more. Of course, they always want more. And the government at that. But it's like the two income trap. And it kind of goes into this philosophy of, you know, people think that money makes them happy or, what was I going for was some sort of security so I could have enough money, have enough, be enough for when my daughter was a certain age. Um, I was in that trap, but the real value is my time, what I'm worth, not to a corporation, but to my daughter and my family. Being able to be around, being able to say yes to them and no to corporate. Yeah, I mean, more income doesn't always mean a better life, especially if it costs time, presence, and family structure. I mean, my wife and I both work now, but because of the way our life is designed and what we do, we have the time. And, as a family unit, my mom and dad don't live together. So, no, we all live together. Everybody chips in. It's not about having the most, the biggest, the best. We're taken care of. We have enough, and that's okay. But more than anything, we have time, we have togetherness, because we have that opportunity. We do get to see each other. But yeah, there were, it was, and we got it wrong in so many ways. I think you can just probably look at the problems in the world, the mental health of the world. That is a result of choices that were made 20, 30 years ago. Choices that were made because of the world was the way the world was. That was the agenda they were pushing. Tradespeople were less than, go to college, which we all know that now, when you look back and you go, yes, I have a master's degree. I think there is some value in education in college. I do. Um, but I was never under the narrative, too, that I'm going to college because I'm too good to be a plumber or an electrician. But, those were kind of the words I heard when I was a kid was, you don't want to do that. You need to be more. You need to go to college. But now we've come to understand that, that's just false. And you need everyone. Because then if everybody went to college, but it's the whole narrative that I dislike of less than. If you're this, you're less than. Because then you got people who are like, well, I'm just doing this because I can't do that. And if I'm just doing this because I can't do that, then I'm only going to give this amount of effort. Well, 20, 30 years, it's like it's hard to find a good mechanic, a good AC person, a good this, a good that. It was probably those one off people who made it work and who own the companies who are successful in it now and doing well. But I mean, this is what I was hearing in the 80s and 90s. And this is why it made me think of that. But we had that discussion of, where I told him, like, hell, it'd make more sense of me to get a steady job when she turns 18 and goes wherever she goes to college, military, whatever she wants to do. Um, when she's more mobile. And that's when it would make more sense. It's almost like we got things backwards. I mean, I saw another one where it was like a post of somebody talking about, people save up the things they want to do for getting older in life or when they retire. And it's like, but your window and your ability to do them, your physicality to be able to do them, the window shrinks. And you're like, no, I'll wait, I'll wait, I'll wait. Well, you know, truthfully is you may get there and not be able to do it if you keep waiting. And that's the whole thing. It's like, I just think somewhere our system, our model got flawed of what we thought was important, be it the war on drugs. Um, that clearly hasn't fucking worked out. Education, the education system, that clearly hasn't fucking worked out. Mm. Golly, think about it. All the years of lies and systems of our thoughts that we've adopted or inherited were all wrapped up in finality of truth with the pandemic and getting laid off and COVID because we understood. Now we understand that that was a lie and bullshit. So that meant a lot of what I had heard over 4 years was bullshit. That societal narrative of this is the best way, or this is the way, this is the plan, this is what you should be doing. Oh, here and there. This also led into some article I read that recruiting was up. And, I think we all know AI, the job market, hiring's not great, this and that, the other. But it made me think of, they made this association or asked this question: is it due to the job market having a not so great job market? Is potential increasing military recruitment? I've watched some other. Oh, look, we're moving again. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to remount this whole thing. Sorry to the listeners. Bear with me. Oh, but you see these reports on the job market, and I've been listening to a lot of shows lately where you think like maybe the change in presidency, the change in cabinet members and whatnot, you're getting more patriotic people in there. Um, and there in turn, the more patriotic people are coming out because maybe the leadership's there and now they want to serve and do something. Um, or could a lousy job market play a factor? I mean, while we're talking about the two income trap, and of course the government's not going to look out for your best interest if they can collect double taxes. And of course, they're going to lie to us over the masks and vaccines and whatever else. Could could we stand to reason? Is it too conspiratorial to think that the government could fuck up the job market to make the military the only place to go? Mm, one, I don't know that the government's that smart. Uh, yeah. Um, two, they have the draft, so they really need people. They could make that happen. When regular life looks unaffordable, military recruitment starts to look like a good deal. Because the moment I heard that, I had already been thinking of this. Richard and I talking about this idea of if the world went back to, okay, women want to be in the workforce now. I don't care if it's man, woman, whoever. If the world was affordable enough, make America affordable again. If it was affordable enough that one person could support a family and the other partner could raise a child, take care of the house, maybe work part time, volunteer, you know, that's more than enough to contribute to society. Think about it. Volunteering, if they wanted to, they could contribute. But I don't know how much you fucking know, but if you've ever been a stay at home parent, that takes a lot of fucking time too. Cleaning, laundry, picking up, you know, taking kids to school, picking them up. Um, we have my father. We have to take him to doctor's appointments and shit too. So it's not just that. I mean, if it was one person could afford to support a family, be it the man or the woman, however you want to fucking arrange it, it doesn't matter. But what does that guarantee? It guarantees you're raising your kids. Will that make for a better world? I don't know. Think about the old models. I mean, minus the Great Depression, where everybody had to work and a lot of young children went to work when they were of working age. But when a lot of mothers stayed home, I mean, and raised their kids, and the fathers went to work, I mean, those were the people who probably fought in World War II. They seem like pretty good people. In terms of going in and coming back, but it's after the war, it seemed like they came back and everybody was on the same page and trying to, I'm talking about the USA or America as a culture. I mentioned Rosie Rivet coming in to help. Everybody was on the same page and trying to make a difference as a whole for the country. Like I said, we don't want to trust the government. Of course, they're not going to. Why would they buy into taking away with making it so affordable that um, one person could do it? Because then they lose it all. That's what I say. Make America affordable again. But if you're raising your own children, you have time to volunteer. You have time to work a part-time job. So the other partner could have time off. It's easier to take vacations because two people aren't trying to request off. I don't know. How does that not make a better world? Because it's almost like, when I heard my mom say that, like, oh, yeah, it's great to have your grandchildren. Yeah, but you gave up all the time with your own kids and now to enjoy the grandchildren. Fuck that. I mean, that's why I'm spending time with my daughter now. But it's like we as a society culture kind of have to decide that. Only if we all thought that was a decent idea and could figure out a way to make it work. But it all starts with a discussion and coming to this think tank of going, do we think the world would be a better place if parents and their children got to spend more time together? If parents got to raise their actual fucking children because the world wasn't so damn expensive that both parents had to work just to barely fucking get by. And believe me, the Boys and Girls Club and all that bullshit cost an arm and a leg. And then you're picking up extra shifts to pay an arm and a leg for somebody else to raise your kids and give them their fucked up beliefs or who knows what. It just doesn't make sense. But we created this. Is it the capitalism? More than likely. That whole get ahead for more and more and more. Yeah, I think so. But I think we can wrap it up with 20 fucking 20. The government's full of shit. Or at least some of the players in it. I don't want a blanket statement the whole government, but I'm sure there's a few bad players. Quite a few. And we've known that. I mean, like any corrupt government, look at Mexico, Venezuela, wherever. So My other thought I had was inheriting hate. I think it's, for some reason, I thought of um, somebody I used to know, and their last name I think was Polish. And I think about the timing and think about having an aunt from Germany. And I just thought about how different, like maybe as a kid, but even the 70s, 80s, just the time, segregation still wasn't that old. But this whole thing of, you know, my people don't like these people, therefore I shouldn't like these people. Um, but yeah, made me think of like that as like kind of like the inference, maybe like as a kid that you could go. For some reason, I was like, well, if I was Polish, and you're like, I was like, well, that person's German, and my aunt was German, from Germany, uh, and it's like this whole thing of going, well, those people were bad to my people. Yeah, I shouldn't like them. There's a lot of that, but I think as time has gone on and we get further away from it, is we all share the same fucking struggles. We're all just trying to do the best we can. We're all just trying to get by, pull up and be loved. And that it's probably just worth going up to that person and saying hello and starting a conversation. Because I mean, yeah, there was a lot of atrocious things that happened. If you add up all the wars and what they were about, I'm not going to say any of them were right or wrong. But I feel like we're in a place, like I said, with 2020, if you say, now we know, yeah, lots of years of lies, be it the program, what they're preaching, the war on drugs, all their initiatives, we know they don't know. If you think of them like a person, they're just an untrustworthy person. You know? They'll have to earn trust. But the big difference, I think, is now I'm pursuing my life knowing that fucking person was a liar, and a lot of what they told me my whole life was bullshit. And I relate that to like a way of life. I'm talking about the way the world was, all the things they were pushing, these ideas of college and education was better, was more, made you better, made you more. No, I really, I prefer equality, and plumbers, electricians, professors, everybody's got value. We just all have value in different things. That's all. Nobody's more or less than. Meh, some are. I mean, in a field like it's like whether it's podcasting or fighting, you're always going to have a number one. So some people are more, for sure. Because I do believe in meritocracy as well. Everybody doesn't get a fucking trophy. But, it's like we have to be careful. We go back to that. Should I hate this person because I'm part of this group, but you want to stay out of um, group identity, group think. Um, you need to make sure that do a little audit and make sure that none of those things have subconsciously or unconsciously seeped in. Because I look back 30 years ago when I just thought of a last name because I passed a road and thought of that. Like, oh. And so you can start to realize, like, oh man, I picked up via textbooks, being around people. And some of this depends on your age and is a sign of the times and the people you're around grew up, and the stories they told. Yeah. Too many of us are loyal to hate what we've never investigated just because we're told that's the way it should be. I don't know. If you guys want to chime in and let me know if you have any small habits that reveal something big, like the pen thing for me. Um, what does it say about how you think? Go back and think about, have you fallen victim to any of these thought patterns? Be it what the world has told you, your parents have told you, your grandparents, and you need to look back and understand that those people, some of where you've gotten your information and influence from, they were in these same situations, these same levels. So it's an added layer. You know, my parents were pressured by their parents and the conditions that they grew up in and the circumstances they were around. So take all those in when doing something like this little audit to understand how much of this has seeped into me and influence my behaviors, my thoughts, my beliefs, why I do or do not do things, give or not give somebody a chance. Yeah, I mean, just think about it. But I think I've done this, what keeps me up at night is I was thinking earlier, I had this thought of like, man, I've been thinking about mortality and that kind of stuff lately a lot. And it was interesting. I was watching a day in the life of, I think it was Lex Friedman today. And he was showing his schedule and everything he does. And he had this thing where he thinks about mortality. And it gave me kind of a weird thought, only because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. It jumped out at me. Um, I don't like to think about it a lot. You can get obsessed with it and it can be quite overwhelming. It can be scary. And I think that's why we avoid it. But there is truth to the matter. He said, you know, he gives a thought because it's the truth. You could walk out your door and that could be the last day you ever laced your shoes up. So for him to give that kind of level of thought every day, like, I'm leaving here, I may not return. I mean, I guess this is a lot like soldiers who leave the wire, go on a patrol. They may not be coming back. You got to face that. But you also need to let it drive you. And You don't want it to paralyze you, but you want to let it drive you to be the best version of you, to yourself, to others, and to potentially maybe take a chance, live something to the fullest. There's some things like recording a podcast and hitting publish. I could be embarrassed about it. The truth of the matter is, I could hit publish today and be gone tomorrow, and those feelings wouldn't matter at all. And that's what the ER told me. Yeah, I was around it daily. I probably thought about death less daily when I was around it more, which is weird. So I don't know if it's age, the season, the whatever, me trying to make sure I'm aligned, doing what's right, and being the best person I can be. I feel it's necessary for me to think about purpose and what's beyond here. Otherwise, what are we doing if there's no meaning to all of this? I know every reason I've ever been hurt. I surely hope there's something. That's the whole reason I'm doing it. Surely somebody can get something out of it, whether it's something for me or somebody I've interviewed. So, otherwise, what would be the point? I would just be a hedonist, I guess. Just kind of the opposite of purpose and all that. So, any hoodles. Till next time. Nope, we're not going to go there. Actually, give all this some thought. I want to know, do you have any weird things like that? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think we should go back to an old, quote unquote, traditional model? Is it time that we invent a new model? Yes, chime in. Leave some comments. Reach out. This is a discussion. Back and forth. This is how we change the world for the better. And if not for us, then our kids and grandkids. But until next time, go out and be the person that you would want to meet.
Asteroid of fear.